Sorry about that. All right, so hi, I'm Matteo Borri. My talk is definitely narrower in scope than the one you just heard. I have something to point out here. The Martian atmosphere is a pain in the ass. Why? Because it's just dense enough to be a problem. It's not quite dense enough to let you use parachutes, so we had to come up with all sorts of landing systems that are very clever but are also very prone to failure. Basically, it's at that quote-unquote sweet spot where it's hard to deal with, but you cannot pretend it's not there. So that means that we have rovers on Mars. We have satellites above Mars. We don't have anything in between. Now, I invite you to imagine a world that does not support airplanes. It would look pretty different, right? Okay, no TSA, that's a plus, but everything else would probably not play very well with us. So, and this is the only, by the way, I am somewhat allergic to PowerPoint, so this is the only slide I have. The rest is video. I am fairly sure you won't mind. So what do we do with it? We do not have any way to fly things on Mars, because now people have worked on quadcopters and the like. The problem with even like a, what on Earth would be a $40 quadcopter would require propeller speeds of 100, 150,000 RPM. It would work for a week and then it would break, because that's just the way the mount flops. If you want the specifics, we have Martian atmosphere is about 3% that of Earth. But you know what but here's the good news. It's mostly CO2. Now, what's an interesting thing about CO2? It compresses very well. It compresses well enough that if you want to do fancy tricks, like, I don't know, launch a battle bot, you want to use CO2 instead of oxygen, instead of air, because air will, well, set your pneumatics on fire, really. That's Bronco this year. I don't know if you guys watch BattleBots. Anyway, so you saw that. So why not use compressed gas, specifically compressed CO2, for launching things into the air that have to come back down? You can, for example, you can take a camera. You can put it in a pneumatic cannon. You can launch it up, let's say, over a ridge, to get a picture of where your rover is going to go next, and then you can, it's a 360 camera. It's inside a foam bowl. The design is very simple. You just put an accelerometer on it to take a picture at the moment of maximum height, because that's easy to detect, and then you can just reel it back in. This was us goofing around at MDRS a couple years back, and it doesn't look super good because that's just live. And I'll spare you. Again, this is a very simple thing. The cute part is that this is a compressor. Like I said, Martian atmosphere is about 3% that of Earth. However, a compressor is known technology, is reliable technology. It's something that we know how to make. We've been making them for more than a century now. It's few parts, simple parts. It's not going to break. Martian gravity actually helps us. This thing just goes up, takes a picture, comes back down. This gives you the middle ground between a rover and a satellite. You can use it for example, you got a rover. You don't have a 3D map of Mars yet. You have, this is the design if anybody cares. By the way, all the stuff you're going to see today, I'm not here to sell you anything. I'm here to give stuff away. So everything you're going to see is, you can go on my website, you can go on the wiki, and I have step-by-step instructions on how to build it. So this is a rover, standard issue, with a little pneumatic cannon on it. It shoots over a ridge. I don't know if I can go there. Maybe there's rocks, maybe there's an incline. I don't know if it's safe for my very hard-to-replace rover to climb that hill. I can use this thing to find out. I compress some air, and it doesn't actually matter it takes a while. It's only going to have to operate once or twice a day. I compress some air, which is going to be mostly CO2, which again is compression friendly. I shoot this thing out. It takes a picture, and then they just reel it back in. It's a simple mechanism. There are very few parts under tension. There are fairly few moving parts at the end of the day, because you can make a decent pump with one moving part. It's just a solenoid and a diaphragm. And that is something that goes at least some way towards closing the gap between something that crawls and something that moves around very high and very fast. And my hope is that this is a low-tech solution for a problem which I believe exists, because we have this survey gap on Mars specifically. Eventually, we're going to have a full 3D map of the planet, so it's not going to matter anymore. But for now, a system like this can greatly increase the potentiality of a rover without adding much weight and much complexity. It's just an air tank and a little compressor. Matter of fact, having a compressor on a rover is useful for other reasons, because the other thing you could do is, suppose that you're all familiar with the rocker bogie suspension. That Curiosity uses it, Sojourner used it. The thing is that, why was the rocker bogie suspension important? Because it doesn't have any springs. It doesn't need any springs. Springs break. Springs coefficient of expansion changes if you're in space all the time. So this is a hydraulic system, but it could easily also be pneumatic. This is the exact same job as a rocker bogie, except without any gearing. Super simple. It's a fairly simple thing to put together. So that was really the main thing that I was hoping you would be interested in. However, I would like to expand on that. If we are to go to Mars, at least for the first few years, we're going to need low-tech solutions. Why? Because we're going to need stuff that doesn't break. Most importantly, we're going to need stuff that is easy to repair. Because you're there, help is at least 18 months away. You're going to have to improvise. We're going to need some kind of MacGyver figure to be on Mars with the first people going there. Because historically, that's just the way it's been. There's something else that's going to, sorry about that. Anyway, so a while ago, there was a contest about how to build stuff on Mars. MIT proposed that we take the Martian regolith and melt it into glass and build stuff from that. It's a brilliant idea. It's got one problem. It's really energy efficient. It's really energy inefficient. Anybody ever try to make glass? You need a forge. You need to heat stuff up to red hot. And you're going to get that power from somewhere. Now, if you brought along a nuclear reactor, fantastic. If you haven't, you're going to have to get it from solar panels, because you can't really burn stuff. So how about pykrete instead? Now, pykrete is, as you probably know, it's ice plus wood pulp or paper pulp. A bunch of crazy Canadians during World War II wanted to build an aircraft carrier off it. That doesn't quite work. However, it turns out that you can make regolith-based pykrete. And this kind of melted itself, unfortunately, because it was in the Southern California sun a bit. You can make Mars-enabled pykrete by using, this is what I could find for regolith simulant. I was given some a while ago. This just contains a little bit of water ice and a little bit of used motor oil, just a thick oil, which I figure would be generated as waste eventually in any Martian settlement. What that gives you, it gives you a fairly solid, we're really literally going back to the basics here. We're going back to mud huts. The trick is you can make mud on Mars, and if you're doubtful about the strength of mud huts, you wouldn't build anything structural with it, but it can be a good cover material. It can be good to anchor tensile structures. It can be good to stop radiation. Properly baked mud, at the end of the day, is terracotta. You probably got some on your roof if you're from Europe. We've been making this stuff for, 4,000 years, and there's a reason why we're still using it. Yeah, it is a brick. The thing is that you can make glass on Mars if you want, if you got a lot of power to spare, or you can make bricks and get, this is I call this picrete mostly because the point of this is that there's no heat here. We're not using any heat. We're not using any electricity. So even an automated extruder could run this without a heating element by just moving back and forth and doing the extrusion. This is me doing like a little glue with those plates, and this is me leaving it out at 20 Celsius, and it destroyed itself after about 50 minutes. There's a time lapse here somewhere. There it is. Now, this is just something that I did, just for the heck of it, to see if I could. But the point is, we're going to need this kind of low-tech solution because even with the best planning that we can do, that we know how to do, that we have learned how to do in 60 years of space exploration, there's always the time you got to improvise. There's always the time that a lightning strikes your aircraft and somebody has to do SE to aux. There's always going to be the time where you got to make an air filter, square L filter, fit in a round hole. These things happen. They are not going to stop happening. They will get rarer and rarer as we get better, but they will never stop happening. So we have to start at least keeping in reserve low-tech solutions. Are you familiar with the YouTube channel Primitive Technology? Okay, if you're not familiar with it, just look it up on YouTube, Primitive Technology. It's 10,000 times more interesting than anything I'm saying. So if you got the time, check that out. Anyway, that was my main point. We will need low-tech solutions. We will need low-energy solution because energy here is something you can get. Energy on Mars is something that we will have to bring along. And it is something that will fail because Murphy decrees that it will, and it will. That's just life. So whatever we do, we're going to, for example, we're going to have to do manufacturing there. We're going to, there's 3D printers, there's lasers. What if you cannot run, for example, this is actually a bad example because on Mars, it will be possible to run a CO2 laser, quote unquote, out on the open air because there's enough low pressure and what little atmosphere is there is mostly CO2. So for example, the biggest problem for, say, a K40 laser is not going to be there. You will be able to just run a tube and run it, but that's the specific. You need to be able to do the work with 8 watts of electricity if that's all you have. So we're going to need solid-state lasers. You cannot, for example, you cannot make, you cannot use a high-temperature 3D printer to do carbon fiber stuff that Markforged is doing. You're going to need to be able to make organometallic filament. This is actually a recipe that I would like to share with you. How many of you have a 3D printer? How many of you have a 3D printer? Nobody? Really? Wow. Okay. Well, there you go. How much you pay for it, roughly? Okay. So you can get a 3D printer today for $200, okay? $200. You can get it for the same cost of a piece of crap phone even at this point. But it can only do ABS and PLA. So what you can do, you can take the ABS, you can put in just a pinch of graphene, that's the expensive part. You can put in just a pinch of aluminum. You get a filament that is about 80% as strong as carbon fiber, but you can make it of any shape you like, and you don't need a fancy printer. You can just do it with a regular printer that makes regular plastic. The point is that even with material science, we're going to have to. This is a friend of mine, Aaron, who's about 1.5 times my size. That's the organometallic print filament. He's trying to break it. He will eventually succeed, of course. But it can handle about 1 ton of pressure, and I am not actually. I'm not making that up. There should be. I should have a video here. Let me quickly find it. By the way, all this stuff, again, I have brought an unholy amount of business cards. There's my website on it. All this stuff, I'm not here to sell you anything. I am here to, well, I'm not here to teach you how to do these things. I'm not going to have time to do it in 30 minutes. But I have a wiki. You can go on the wiki. There's step-by-step instructions on how to put everything, on how to pull this stuff together. Matter of fact, I actually brought some with me. So, anybody feel like breaking some stuff? Anybody? Please. This is regular 3D printer filament. Can you break it? Just do it over your head so people can see it. Thank you. This is one of the early experiments for the organometallic filament. It's probably going to break faster than the other one, actually. It didn't come out very well.
Oh, yeah.
And this is the final product.
A little harder.
There you go. Appreciate it. So, the point, again, this is just single use cases. So was the pneumatic cannon thing. The point is, we're going to go to Mars. We're not going to do it with nearly as much money as we were promised, because that's just life being life. So we're going to have to at least keep in mind that we will have to improvise. What you do in that case is that you make your technology easy to improvise with. You make sure that it's modular. You make sure that even if it costs you a bit of delta V because it's bigger, you make sure that a person, somebody in the field can work on it. I don't know if you ever tried to open up your cell phone and work on them. It's kind of hard. I don't know if you ever tried to open up your desktop computer. It's somewhat easier, at least. Yeah. And past that, well, this is mostly what I've got. The other thing I had is that I have a piece of tech specifically designed for MDRS. I have a cooling system for their suit. Did they already do that presentation? I don't think so. When they will, I'll come back to you. Now I have a question for you guys, because I'm done. This is all I had to say. I have a question for you guys. What do you think that exists today on Earth? We'll talk about Mars later. Start with Earth. What do you think that exists today that is too complicated or too unfriendly to fix or modify? iPhone. Say again? iPhone? iPhone. Okay, good example. So the iPhone is very tightly locked. It used to be illegal to jailbreak your own iPhone. I'm pretty sure in some countries still is. The alternative there is Android. It's generally less fancy, it's cheaper, it's not quite as user-friendly, but you can do a lot more stuff with it. You can buy a piece of crap $30 phone, and it can do more than an iPhone. It doesn't look nearly as cool, probably, but that's exactly the kind of thing we have to design for. So one thing that's going to be important is that we do not lock ourselves onto a vendor. Now, for iPhones, it's Apple, obviously. For aerospace stuff, it could be Lockheed Martin, it could be Boeing, it could even become SpaceX. Down the road, they're going to be more established. It's going to be like Microsoft circa 1990. They were very disruptive at first. Then they finally got their hold of a segment of the market, and they hang on to it with claws. We can't afford to do that because it's not going to work. Mars cannot, at least to start with, Mars will not be able to afford to have a brand, will not be able to afford to have proprietary technology, because you're there, something breaks, you've got to be able to build a cooking system out of a plasma torch. That's not out of the window, by the way. So let's say that I want, for example, let's say that I want to cook a fish patty. I want to cook a fish patty, and a microwave, which I probably will have on Mars, will cost me at least 600 watts of electricity. That can be a lot. I think I'm very sure that the Curiosity rover is actually a couple of kilowatt, but the ones that came before were less than that. So what can you do? Well, if you have a plasma torch, you can use it to cook your burgers. Now, this looks cockamamie as hell, and frankly, it's also fairly dangerous. But it does work. And the cute part is it actually uses about a fifth of the power. So this is something that is less user-friendly. You can see me trying to not electrocute myself there. This is something that's less user-friendly. It definitely doesn't look like something you would buy in a store. I mean, look at the damn thing. But it gets the job done with a fifth of the power. This thing runs on about, I want to say 120 watt, but it's more like 140. And, well, I like to think it looks kind of cool. Okay, this is just me showing off, but the point I'm trying to make is...
So what kind of cuisine is that?
Well, I'm from Italy, so I'm going to call it Italian cuisine, okay? I get to do that. The point being, of course, this is the kind of stuff we're going to see. People, you know, you watch even The Martian. The Martian is a fantastic movie. You see exactly what I'm talking about. This guy improvising, and that's the whole point of the movie, pretty much. I hope it doesn't happen that way. Well, but it will happen. There will be things like that. People who came to this country, you know, we had possibly the Egyptians. Well, of course we had the Native Americans, which were here first. Then we had possibly the Egyptians, definitely the Vikings. Then we had Columbus, and after that, people stopped saying that they discovered it and just came here. But the thing is, if you look at all the people who came first, they were lacking something. They were lacking the ability to improvise. They were conquerors. Columbus was a sailor, and if you run a sailing ship, you know how to improvise. Otherwise, you just don't. This is true today, and it was 100 times more true before GPS and before radio, because you were there, you were on your own little boat, you had your 15 guys, and there was no help coming. You had to get good at improvising. And that's the first expedition that actually managed to stay there. Now, Columbus was a bit of an asshole, but he did get the job done. So, that's pretty much what I have for you. Now, I promised another video, and I can find the damn thing. So if you have any questions, I'm open. If you want me to get off the stage, just boo me.
How was your patty?
I ate it. I wanted to bring some here. I was not given permission. What?
Given permission?
Yeah, they told me let's not because it's technically catering. Then we had to get a catering permit, and it just goes all weird after that. Apparently, that's what they told me. Huh? Anyway, my point here was I wanted to show off a little bit of tech, a couple bits of tech that I came up with, but I wanted to share a design philosophy. We will not be able to go anywhere without extremely careful planning. But extremely careful planning has to not become hubristic. It has to understand that the planning will not cover all the cases. And this is actually a problem because you go do any kind of you do any kind of work anywhere, they're gonna want to see PowerPoints, they're gonna want to see preparations, which is good. This was kind of improvised intentionally, by the way. The problem is if you're working with people who are used to planning everything in advance, that's good. The 99% of the time it works. The 1% when it doesn't work, it all falls apart. So you need that, and you also need to be able to tell yourself, I will be humble, I will accept that no amount of planning will cover all the cases, because if I could do that, I would basically be creating a new universe in my simulation. We're not there yet. I hope we never get there. Otherwise, nobody's going to... Go ahead.
So you know here it's like, what is it, chicken wire and duct tape? It builds everything?
My point, no, not everything.
On Mars, can we have like duct tape that's for Mars?
Well, there is, duct tape, like the regular gray duct tape. Here's a cool story actually for you. It works on the moon, so there's no reason why it wouldn't work on Mars, because it's not depending on atmosphere or anything. And in fact, everybody knows the Apollo 13 story because they made a movie out of it.
It was indoor.
What?
It was indoor.
Well, yeah, they never got. Well, technically, you're right. They never got out of the capsule, so yes, it was indoor. On Apollo 15, it was the first time that they were trying the lunar rover. They found out that they drove around, And the problem is that they were kicking all this moon dust all over the place. Now, moon dust will kill you because there's no smoothing, atmospheric smoothing of it, so it's super sharp. It will get into your lungs and give you silicosis in a week. So they were kicking out the dust all over the place. Solution: get a bit of duct tape, which somebody had thoughtfully put in the Apollo capsule. Rip off the front page of the operating manual for the lunar module, and use it to make little mud flaps. And if you don't believe me, look it up. I don't actually remember if it's Apollo 14 or 15. I'm pretty sure it's 15. But just look up, moon rover mud flaps, and it will show up. So the point is, chicken wire and duct tape doesn't get you very far, but it does get you that little bit farther. So when we design our systems, we must make room for modularity. We must make room for the user to not just be the user. We need to say, okay, you're there, you have been given enough spare parts, enough attach points to suit the thing to the environment you're in right now, because no amount of simulation will tell you exactly what's going on. Otherwise, there would be no point in going in the first place.
That can also be a lot more productive, because then that doesn't imply, with the NASA thing, it implies that you practiced it 50 times before you actually do it.
Yep.
Yes, are you aware of any planning, maybe even currently with NASA, where after they make the master list of everything that's going to go on the space capsule or up to the space station, all detailed, engineered, and everything else, is somebody going to put some toothpicks in there?
I am not aware of it, and that's exactly, I did a little bit of work at Ames Research Center last year. I poked people around about it. This is not in the doctrine, and that's a problem.
Well, are you aware of anybody like yourself or others that may have put together, a list, a couple of rolls of aluminum foil, some duct tape?
I am not. If you are, please. I am not. If you are, please tell me, because I would love to know it. Because as far as I know, it's not in the doctrine, and it needs to be.
If you're a Boy Scout,
Yeah. Well, I've never been in the Scouts. We have something similar in Italy. It's more sailing oriented, but.
yeah, Sea Scouts.
That's what I heard. The best people to go to Mars be farmers or commercial fishermen, because if they don't get it straightened out, they starve. And so they're very inventive, very creative.
I absolutely agree. I did 2 weeks at MDRS. Again, my experience is I sailed for fun. I worked for a maritime survey company, and it was expedient to have there somebody who is used to improvising. Another group of people I would look at, especially for long duration missions, is people who work inside submarines, because you have the same constraints. Plus, they're already used to being cooped up.
Just about all the time we got.
What? Say again?
You're at time. Just about all the time we got.
Okay.